My name is Jackie Thiel. I'm the Assistant City Manager. And we're here to give you a little background about what energy aggregation means and answer some of your questions. Historically, Upper Arlington has done energy aggregation in the past. And in the past, this is a little bit different than what we've done before. We used a broker for our energy aggregation. And this time, we'll go more into it, but we are partnering with SOPEC, which is a local or a group of governments empowered to buy energy at a higher population rate. So they'll go into their background. But again, thank you for joining us. If you have questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A. And at the end of the presentation, we'll go through as many of those as we can. With that, I do want to share, I had my screen shared before, just showing you the other opportunities for engagement. So if there's someone that you know that wasn't able to join us, we will post these on our website, but we also have 2 more community meetings coming up in person. We have one next Thursday, August 24th at 6:30 p.m. here at the Municipal Building. And then another one on August 28th at 6 p.m. here at the Municipal Building. And then this will be going before Council for 3 readings, September 11th, 18th, and 25th is when they're scheduled to vote at this time. So with that, I will introduce Luke Sulfridge. He is the Executive Director for SOPEC, and we have Phil Lepley, who is in-house counsel for SOPEC. So thank you both for joining us today too.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
And I can share the presentation here. Here we go.
Fantastic. All right. This slide has a lot of fun images on it. We'll touch on most of them, but if you view the presentation later, this is a pretty good sampling of some of the grants that we've completed with our member communities and some of the accolades they've gotten in recent years. We are a council of governments formed in Ohio statute. In Ohio, we are a deregulated energy market. You can shop for power as an individual, as a group of communities, or as a community, or as a group of communities. We represent the group of communities shopping together and that combine buying power and leverage for contracts that comes with. We are governed by the communities we serve. Every member community has a representation on our governing General Assembly body. We are formed to create efficiencies in local government. So instead of having these expertise at every individual community, we share them together and are able to bring more specific skill sets and technical expertise with that. We do have a commitment to renewable energy. So SOPEC is committed to saving folks energy or money on their energy bills, particularly electricity. But we also have a firm commitment to finding renewable sources from a policy standpoint and helping that thread through our program so we can do both. So it's very much a goal of ours to save residents money and let that be through renewable source power. We're also a public entity. So every couple of years we're audited. Our meetings are all open to the public. Just like every local government, we are government ourselves. So we're subject to the same criteria and rules. We have 2 governing bodies, one of which is our General Assembly, which I just referenced. That is, every member community has 1 vote, 1 seat at the table. It's very collegial and folks work very well together, I will say, with common goals. The others are board of directors. That's a subset of the General Assembly. And if we need to meet more frequently, and the General Assembly actually has been meeting more frequently as of late. So it's one or the other, but the board of directors is 5 regions, the state, so 4 corners plus Central Ohio, 5 largest communities, and up to 5 at-large members. So we have folks that may be a village mayor that might not qualify otherwise, that has a lot to contribute, or in the instance of one of our current members, they are an executive director for another political subdivision who happens to be the former head of the EPA for the state of Ohio. So he brings a lot of wisdom with him as well. That group can meet quarterly if the General Assembly doesn't meet in place of it on a quarterly basis. So here's where we are today. That changes. We actually just added a community yesterday, and we're meeting with another one, or last week, we were meeting with another one yesterday. So we're expanding pretty rapidly across the state of Ohio. Our roots are in Southeast Ohio, so you'll see a lot of pins down there. But over the last several years, we've been expanding to other regions of the state as well. So of note, most recently, Cleveland joined up with us. A couple years ago, Dayton joined up. And then close to folks on this call, Marble Cliff is actually our first in Franklin County. So we're excited to have the opportunity to speak with other communities in Franklin as well. And they're saving about 40% in Marble Cliff versus the standard service offer. So that's been, I think, a great program so far. Our combined buying power would make us the second largest city in the state of Ohio when you put all of our members together, all of the population of our member communities. So we're pretty substantial when you put everybody together. So even for our smallest communities, and you guys are by no way our smallest community if you guys come online with us, but they have that shared buying power, shared expertise, and shared contractual leverage that they would if they were all combined population. So that's, I think, a really great asset to all of us working on this collectively and collaboratively. We do have an additional partner on the outside. AEP Energy has an exclusive contract with us. So we work with AEP Energy to procure power. So AEP runs auctions for us to provide the power supply to keep them honest from a pricing standpoint. But they also have a whole team of experts as well that have deep industry knowledge, have the ability to do really creative programming. So we're very excited to have that deep partnership with AEP Energy. It also enables us to be very nimble from a pricing standpoint. We can get daily pricing updates. So as a pricing strategy for us, again, they're doing an internal auction in real time for us for supply, but we're also able to get daily pricing so that as a community is considering either activating or reactivating a program, we have good trend lines to show them of where the market is, where it's been, where we anticipate it's going, and can price it very rapidly accordingly instead of doing an RFP where it may be a month out. And depending on what happens in the market that day, it could be a good day or a bad day. So we really watch the markets and let that drive our timing in conjunction with our communities and what their appetite and process is for joining up.
And I'm going to do it too again, but because it comes up, AEP is separate from AEP Energy, right?
It is. So one big corporate family. So similar names, but different companies. And we're going to talk about it a little bit, but probably get ahead of a few of the questions that are likely going to come. AEP Ohio is who keeps the lights on. They manage lines and wires. Nothing is impacted by this program as far as reliability. They maintain the lines and wires, substations, just like they are at present. So for better or worse, that remains unchanged. We are talking about the generation component of the bill. And with that, our CRES, or retail energy supplier, is AEP Energy for the purposes of procuring the power from the generation side. But yes, different companies. There's AEP Corporate, AEP Ohio, and AEP Energy, and we work with.
It's very confusing.
It's yes. We view ourselves as part of a broader ecosystem of sustainability. So within that, we make sure that we're active, encourage our communities to be active with us. We're already actually a member of the Tri-Village Chamber. So a number of chambers statewide we're active with, as well as a lot of the NGO community, the nonprofits. So groups working on electric vehicle charging infrastructure, groups working on historic preservation of buildings, or small distributed generation. So we work with a lot of these groups in different ways to help move forward with an agenda that helps advance energy policy in each given community and helps bring more resources to our communities as we're trying to build out new infrastructure or update existing infrastructure. So we look at sustainability holistically. So particularly see a lot of main streets with Heritage Ohio. One of the greenest buildings is a building that doesn't have to be built. So we are very much in Ohio, have some beautiful built downtowns that we are happy to help support and for them to look for ways to make them even greener with the existing infrastructure. So pretty broad array of groups there, but just want to highlight that real quick. So speaking of lines and wires, this is a pretty quick representation of the US grid. So when we talk about the grid, a very high level, this is what it looks like. We are a piece of the grid called the PJM. So PJM goes from Chicago to New York. Those are the folks that make sure the lights stay on. So they are kind of Wall Street meets air traffic control. So they're making sure there's adequate supply of power. They're filling needs if there's a need to bring extra power in line. They're the ones dispatching power in real time to make sure. None of that changes with an aggregation program. Aggregation is purely working with the markets and making sure that local communities have the ability to control pricing instead of relying on the utilities to set the base pricing for default standard service offers. So we can go to the next one. We are part, in Ohio, we have legislation what's referred to as community choice aggregation. So when Ohio deregulated over 2 decades ago, it allowed folks to shop for their power. And as I mentioned, you can shop as an individual, you can shop as a community or a group of communities. So instead of communities shopping on their own, trying to figure it all out, we represent a group of communities doing it collectively and bringing those shared resources, whether it's energy experts, which we have Phil as our in-house counsel, but we also have additional outside counsel that works with us going really deep, and especially the creative work we do. But this is what powers us and the ability for Ohio to control energy markets. Again, we're separating the generation component from the delivery systems. So aggregation does not impact the reliability, again, for better or worse, of the delivery systems. So when we talk about renewable assets, we are putting them in the big pot. We are not impacted by, in no shape or form, any differently than US. So it's also connected to the grid. So we are the same grid that you're already connected to, same reliability you're already connected to. Aggregation is not a unique concept across Ohio. There are over 400 communities that have active programs. You can have aggregation for electricity or natural gas. So you can see across the state, many communities. And in fact, with the rising energy costs, a lot of communities have taken control of it in recent years and either reactivated programs. Dayton is an example. Dayton worked with us last several years to reactivate their program. They were actually a member of ours for almost a year before they activated a program on flow until they felt comfortable the time was right for them. As a result of that program, they saved roughly $10 to $11 million for residents last year by taking control of that program with us and utilizing timing accordingly to procure power while being 100% green. Go next. So this does exclude some folks. So we are doing what's called an opt-out aggregation program, is our primary program in the way that aggregation runs in Ohio, which means the default is folks are in unless they fit these categories or choose to not participate, which is one of the ways of not being in there. So PIP customers, those are folks who are payment, income adjusted basis for their electricity bill. That's a separate program. They're not eligible for aggregation. Anybody who's shopped for power and has an existing aggregation or electricity contract, if you went out and shopped on your own, unless you proactively come back into the program, you would have to opt into it. You will not be swept up into it. So if you have a program you're happy with, you like your price, you are not impacted in any shape or form. Large industrial customers, aggregation is limited to a certain threshold. So it's residential and commercial primarily who are participating in the program. And then again, anybody who wants to opt out. So there's no cost for opting out of our program. There is a 21-day notification window. You'll get a letter in the mail that will say that. And with that, if you miss your 21 days and day 22, you call in, you may get enrolled for 1 month just based on timing of the utility and where the data sets sit as far as enrollment periods. But there's no cost to come in or out of the program. So there's no early termination fee from our side. Now, if you have a different contract, there may be one there. So I encourage you to check to make sure, and you weigh that option with the savings to make sure it makes sense for you. But we try to be as flexible as possible. And then also, if you want to permanently be on a list to not be aggregated, you can actually go with the PCO and you'll be permanently taken off the list. They have a do not aggregate list they maintain as well. So the way that we run our program, unlike some others, we have fixed pricing. So we have found success with savings by not gambling. So we believe in locking in pricing. When we see savings, and we base those based on the utility auctions. So when the utilities are buying their power, we know roughly what their power is going to cost and make our decisions for buying accordingly that try to time it to where we can get cheaper power. So our approach to being cheaper is a markets-based approach. There was a question in the chat already on if it was a federal subsidy makes us cheaper. That is not the case. We are cheaper because we've been more successful at picking the market moments and being more nimble than utilities are with the market. So I think for the future, absolutely renewables will be part of driving the price down. But at present, it's largely us being really savvy with the markets, enabling us to see those savings. Other benefits of SOPEC I mentioned are extended energy attorneys with some very great attorneys that help our cities all the time with some really tricky problems. We also have a dedicated team of grant writers. So we've been supportive of our communities, at least in recent months, in providing direct support for them applying for grants. So often they don't have the bandwidth to apply for a grant they're invited to apply for it in some cases. We're able to provide that technical support either to apply with them or help them give guidance as they shape the application themselves. So particularly in this day and age, and there are a lot of new programs being launched, that's been a really great resource for a lot of our communities. We also operate as a regional energy manager. So we meet with our communities on a regular basis. We share information with them. They share information with each other. And we become that hub for things. Sometimes they go outside the scope of energy and to other sustainability topics. But SOPEC is there as a resource if they need to go deep on a given topic and help them solve it to where it wouldn't be efficient for every city to have all those capacities on their own. Community grants can be part of our program design. Many communities choose to have that while still seeing the savings. And those enable a small portion of the electric rate to go back to the community through grants. A lot of those come back in the form of local matches for bigger projects. We helped with a battery backup system through a private grant. Recent years, we've helped with the first electric bus in the state of Ohio, and the first rural electric bus, I should say. We've helped with solar projects and EMS stations. All these things largely are going to save the community's money in the long term. So the community grant program itself furthers the savings. We helped with a pool pump last week on a small community that needed an upgrade on their pump, which would pay for itself pretty quickly. Little League ball field lights, converting them LEDs, so they were reducing the electric bill. So lots of creative things happening, a lot of investment in electric car chargers as well. So we're helping facilitate those resources from federal governments coming in. We also have the capability of helping facilitate RFPs. So I mentioned solar on public facilities. As energy costs have risen, communities are also feeling that pain in their own budgets for the municipal accounts. So we've been helping our communities organize either directly with us or helping them vet out an RFP to where they can procure resources to put solar on their own roofs to reduce that burden. It also makes them more resilient. So when you start talking about solar on water plants and sewer plants, especially with battery backup, then you're really looking at a community that has resiliency. So if there is a problem with the grid or a derecho, heaven forbid, something like that, that we have the ability to keep our cooling centers going, or the ability to keep the water going. Those are things that make all of our communities more livable. We do also offer legislation in some cases. So as one example here, do not knock legislation. There are often folks that go door to door. We offer legislation in our communities so that those folks have to register. So at least there's accountability of who's been knocking on the doors. So if there's a question, you can follow up with them. So we can go to the next one now. So as to what we consider renewable energy, we usually get a lot of questions around that. We are pretty strict on what we consider renewable. So for us, that's narrowed to, not that this is permanently limiting, but at present, this includes solar, hydro, and wind for our purposes. So most of our renewable energy certificates are coming from wind power. There are opportunities for hydropower that we do take advantage of for some of our communities, but those are the three primary sources of our renewable energy at this point. And I'll get to how we qualify that renewable energy and how it fits in the program here in a second. But actually, let's go ahead and advance that slide now. So renewable energy certificates. So when power is procured, it's really put into two buckets, several really, but for the purposes of today, two. One is for procuring the power. The example that the EPA uses sometimes is an ATM. So everybody's putting the power into a giant bucket or one machine. The dollar you put in is not the same dollar you're getting back. And just like the grid, your power may be coming from any given point and has more to do with the technical aspects. We control the market side, so we're controlling what's going in and which parts we're buying back out. So there's one component that's the raw power supply. The other component is the value of the green power. So we're putting those to the communities. So a lot of our wind actually does come out of state in Ohio, unfortunately. We are working on building assets in state so we can keep those dollars in state, but at present, just the reality of where we stand. You can buy RECs that are higher RECs, and I encourage folks to do that. That's great. There's just a lot more premium attached to those. So as a policy decision, we've decided to buy out-of-state RECs because they're significantly cheaper at present. But again, we do have an eye on building out renewable assets in Ohio so that we can, for a variety of reasons, but including RECs is one of those that we would be able to generate our own. And there's going to be a video that we're going to attach, I believe, to the website that'll be able to go. That'll be this one. I don't think the sound's going to work for us unless we figure that out.
I didn't change anything, so it's not going to work.
Cool. So this
I'll post it to the
website. There's a much deeper dive that the EPA has put together on what RECs are. And so when you hear RECs, I would say almost every community, especially within Ohio, that has a green energy program, the majority of them are utilized through RECs. So it's a virtual renewable asset. It gets a little technical. I'm happy to talk more about that when we get to question time. But one of the things that we're able to do for our communities as well is give them recognition. So we have been successful at many of these communities, not all of them. Some of them have joined us since doing this, including Cleveland. But there are currently 20 EPA green power communities across the state of Ohio. There are about 100 nationwide. SOPEC represents all 20 of them within the state of Ohio. So all the communities that have met this high standard, we are currently serving through our program. So we're very proud of that. And this is all while seeing double-digit savings for all these communities. So all these communities are getting national accolades and saving money at the same time.
And worth mentioning too, there very likely will be a flag, so to speak, a pen in Central Ohio for Village of Marble Cliff, because they will qualify, as will the city of Riverside over in Southwest Ohio near Dayton.
Those will be the next two to come on. That's absolutely right. The next one, I actually am going to give a shout out to Up Arlington. We take no credit for it, but Up Arlington has already achieved Soul Smart. They're not on our list, but if council decides to join us, we'd happily put them on the list here. This is a national credential for communities that have taken steps to become solar friendly. So cutting the red tape, essentially, is what a lot of this is, and creating the policies in a very public-facing way to folks know how to install solar and what the benefits of it are in their given community. SOPEC itself was the first aggregator in the state of Ohio to allow net metering. So for those of you that have solar, you know what that is. If you don't, it's the ability of you to feed power back into the grid and be compensated fairly for it from your own roof. So SOPEC allows those folks happily to participate in our program at a rate roughly equivalent to AP Ohio's policy at this point. So SolSmart is another thing that we help our communities credential or level up with, but in this case, Upper Arlington is the first city in the state of Ohio actually to go SolSmart. I'll brag, we actually have the smallest village in the country. Amesville, they're number 1 on the list, is the smallest SolSmart community, but
SolSmart Gold is Upper Arlington's the first.
Yep. They were the first. Yep. I've got a background in solar. We can skip over this, but the short answer here is that we can help our communities do a lot of creative work, particularly in solar. We also manage a program for USDA statewide that helps small businesses and farms go solar. So we do an analysis program for that we're very proud of as well. Here's some real examples that are present from last year and this year where we stand. This is a comprehensive list, so we're not hiding any from you, I should say. That's something we probably didn't mention in the past, but this is everybody. So when I say all of our communities are saving money, I mean all of our communities are saving money. You will see some difference. It depends when they bought power. So we do not gamble, as I said before. If we see savings, we talk to our communities and what their risk appetite is. And a lot of times they think, we're ready, we'd like the savings, we'll take them. And so you see a reflection in the market taking a dip this spring to where some of those communities seeing 30–40% right now. Cleveland right now has less than 2% of folks deciding not to participate in the program, which is almost unheard of for aggregation programs, but we're 44% below the market. So from a pure economic standpoint, that's a very good program.
What Luke means by below the market, he means the standard service offer. So just to clarify.
Yep, that's why we have the attorneys in the call. They keep us straight. Thanks, Phil. But that's absolutely right. The standard service offer is the what the rate would be if you did nothing to change your rates. For comparison, in Central Ohio right now with the AP Ohio, the standard service offer is 11.2 right now. So if you're looking at our pricing, which we don't list all those on there, I guess right now, most recently the communities have been in the 6 and 7 cent range. So for comparison to 11, that's a pretty obvious giant amount of savings. And these are all while being 100% green, and the standard service offer is not. So we're seeing these savings in addition to being green. So this is double benefit, like I just described. All right, we can do the next one. Oh, and we're right there to the end.
Yeah.
So Jackie, actually, if you don't mind advancing to the first slide, I think it's the most fun. We'll go to questions from there, but there's a lot of fun in that one.
All right.
Actually, as we do that, I guess as a public service announcement, a few of our grant projects here to highlight them. We are actively working on EV grants statewide, clean power community, or green power community I mentioned already. You see one of our mayors proudly holding a sign there. Our solar bus, our electric bus I mentioned, that's an EMS station. It's the first net zero EMS station in the state of Ohio. And then in the bottom right corner, I'll flag, is the first electric police car in the state of Ohio down in Logan, Ohio. So we help pay for the chargers for that. But there's some fun videos online if you want to see it in action. But I'll turn it over to you, Jackie. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And just for a little bit of clarification, so if council takes action on September 25th to join SOPEC, we still have that timing decision that SOPEC will help guide us on when we would actually lock in rates. With everything we're seeing right now, it would probably be immediately because there's a huge cost savings to be seen, and then guide us on how long that would be. So if we did it for 12 months, people could opt out. They could opt out during that 12 months. There's no penalty. We could choose to do a 24 months, same things. It'll just be dependent on what's going on with the energy market. And that's why the partnership with SOPEC was an important aspect to the city of Upper Arlington to provide that guidance at a statewide level on the energy market. So with that, I appreciate both of you helping us go through that presentation and offering to do questions with us. So I will start going through the questions as we receive them. If anything comes up for all the attendees here, additional questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A. And then when I get a chance here in a second, I'll also put my email address in the chat so that if something comes up after the fact, or we don't get a chance to answer your question, feel free to email me and I'll get it answered. I'll either answer it directly or I'll have someone help me. So we will start with, is the reason that people can sometimes save money by using SOPEC because of the massive federal subsidizing and federal grants supporting wind and solar power that are prompted by public fear of global warming?
No, at present, the savings we're seeing are purely our ability to beat the markets. Long-term, there are tax credits available for helping public entities and nonprofits build out assets, as well as for-profit entities, has been for a while with the tax credits. So we will be looking to leverage those for building assets down the road, but at present, we're beating the market despite any tax incentive.
All right, and then another question that kind of goes with that, is it correct that wind and solar energy are only competitive with fossil fuels because of massive governmental financial support and regulations imposed on fossil fuels?
So that's a whole, lots of PhD.
That's like a whole question.
Yeah, so I will say that the current marketplace, it's now actually cheaper to build wind and solar than it is to maintain fossil fuel assets. So that's an important data point. I will say that the tax code as it relates to incentives for oil and gas and subsidies compared to fossil solar and wind. I don't really want to go to that rabbit hole today because that's a whole other conversation, but I think there's a robust conversation to be had on what an equitable policy looks like and what a policy that drives us to future energy sources that are beneficial, where that should go. But yeah, I think at present, it is cheaper to build new assets.
All right, next question. Is the partnering with AEP Energy a limiting factor as it rules out other suppliers?
So I mentioned we have an exclusive, and I guess, Jackie, this maybe goes to you too, but I'll take it from our side. We decided a few years ago to lock into an exclusive partnership with AEP Energy based on several criteria that we went through. We felt they were the best fit for us, and also we negotiated a contract that had a lot of transparency between us and them. So we have an open dialogue with them. There's regular information sharing. But we also made sure there were mechanisms in the contract that had renewal periods, that had the ability for us to force them to go to market to procure power, to keep them honest, to make sure it was an honest process. I will also say that the market of CREST providers in Ohio is shrinking. Several of them have been merged or being bought by the same entities. So it's a very, very small group of actors in this space. So if we didn't have a partnership with AEP Energy, there would be a very, very small amount of folks who would otherwise be eligible beyond them. So I think it's maybe a little deceiving thinking there are options that don't currently exist.
Right, and all residents still have the option to go shop for electricity. You go do that right after this if you'd like, or you can opt out of the program and go shop at that time. So you still have decisions that you can make.
Yep.
And our city council is just looking at this as, first, the reason it came up is because of the way the energy market has gone in the last year, and because prices have gone up so much, they wanted to see what they could do for residents to lower their electric bill, and then at the same time, look at sustainable energy sources so that they are meeting the sustainability goals that they have set in place too. So that's kind of where this all came about. All right, so next question is, if you've already shopped for electricity yourself, how will you find out about the aggregation program? And you wouldn't be swept in, correct?
They would not be. If they've already shopped previously, they will need to proactively rejoin. So I think I'll brag on the city of Upper Arlington, what I've seen already from communication planning, but Jackie, I'll defer to you on some of those baseline things you guys are doing. I will say it's a very impressive communication shop working with us to spread the word. But
yeah, so we did send out postcards to all property owners in Upper Arlington. We're doing these Zoom information sessions because I think Zoom can sometimes be much more convenient for people. We're going to do some in-person meetings, take this to council. But even after that, you know, I had someone ask me about, you know, what are we going to do about older residents that may not understand how to opt out? We're going to have a lot of communication that goes out. If council chooses to vote and join SOPEC, and there'll be direct mailers to homes, but I think we'll also do maybe some workshops at the senior center. We can have a workshop here that just kind of walks people through that process, because we don't want anybody to be locked into something that they don't want to be. So. Next question is, I currently have a 6.8% rate. How does this compare with your AEP pricing under aggregate programs?
So the pricing does depend on which community you're talking about. The most recent communities, which you guys are probably most reflective of, we're seeing actually just recently Cleveland, which is not an AP community, but they're at 6.3. I think Marble Cliff is closer to 7. You can pull that number up, Phil, for me. We can give you that number exactly. It's probably the most representative. That's our most recent AEP community. So we'll get you an answer on that when Phil looks it up.
Yeah. Next question is, how does SOPEC get its resources?
So that's a great question. So we do get a few grants. Right now I mentioned the USDA grant that funds that particular program. So it's a pretty minimal part of our budget. But most of ours is embedded in the rates. So we have an administrative fee that's embedded in the rates. So when I mentioned all those savings, we have embedded in there. And if we've done our job correctly, we're seeing savings well above and beyond the tenths of a cent that go in to make up our administrative costs. So it's volumetrically that we're compensated. The city does not pay us directly. It's all embedded in the program rate itself. So if we have a secured rate that's cost competitive, that's where it's embedded.
All right, this next question kind of takes us on an adventure. So let's say UA joins the program and only 10% of the households opt out. Then we have cold weather that causes the grid to shut down for a week, that brings wind power from Texas to UA. Who will have electricity for their homes? Everyone? Only 10%? No one? So I think this speaks to the difference between what we're doing and the grid.
It does. So what happens to the grid does not impact aggregation at all. So it's at least as far as reliability of the grid. So if you are participating in the aggregation program, not participating in the aggregation program, you have the exact same reliability, again, for better or worse, that you had before the program started. So we are talking about a markets approach. We are buying pieces of the market share at a certain rate and locking you guys in at those rates accordingly to where we're controlling costs. So it does not affect reliability.
If I currently have AEP Energy as my supplier, is this the same as SOPEC?
It would not be. So AEP Energy has some options that are outside of SOPEC. So that person would be certainly welcome to cross shop it as an individual against our program rate and see which serves their needs the best.
And would you have a list of recommended solar power companies who could install solar panels?
That's a dangerous thing to do. There are several nonprofits in the state of Ohio that would be happy to do that with you. I'd recommend Solar United Neighbors, who helps organize community co-ops. I would also recognize Green Energy Ohio, Power Clean Future Ohio. There's a lot of nonprofits that could better answer that question appropriately. But there are a number of really great companies across the state of Ohio. There's some credentials you can look for, and that's a whole other conversation. But I would go to those folks and they'll give you some guideposts to look for, if not the names outright.
Good. So I think we covered this, but just to be clear, are residents automatically enrolled or do we need to opt in?
So if you've never shopped for power, if you're at the base utility AEP Ohio rate or come back into it at present, you will be included in the program. If you've previously shopped and found another supplier and like to participate, you would have to opt into the program.
And then I don't know if you have this off the top of your head, but what is the lifespan of renewable energy equipment, and is it recyclable? Depends on which kind you're talking about.
It absolutely does. So for solar panels have a 25-year warranty. It's the industry standard. They're talking about raising that, but they're guaranteed 80+% production warranties. That's the industry standards if you're talking residential, commercial. Recycling is a more nebulous question. So a lot of the panels, like the racking systems are iron, aluminum, things that we're used to recycling. The panels themselves have some more complicated components. There are folks working on that. As it relates to wind power, I was in a conference last week and that conversation came up as well. Wind turbines have a 30-year lifespan is what they're being estimated for right now. There is a lot of discussion on what to do with the carbon fiber on the wind blades themselves and discussion of embedding them in some industrial infrastructure as a second use, art projects and the like. But I think those are very open, good questions to be having. But yeah.
This person likes the idea of this, and they asked if they needed to do anything, assuming that UA adopts this plan. So you can for sure follow the council action. September 11th and 18th will be the public hearings before council, where they're hearing the legislation for the city to join SOPEC and also adopt the
Plan of operations and governance.
Plan of operations and governance. Thank you.
Yep.
But then council would be taking action September 25th. So you can see how that vote goes. You can always reach out to me to get an update along the way. I put my email address in the chat box there. And then let's see, one more is what I have here. Explain again as to whether your constant checking rates means that if a lower rate occurs during term of contract, the lower is I think they meant to say the lower rates applied. Do all your clients get the same lower rate?
So when we buy for a community, we're buying 100% of their set terms. So if a community wants to buy power for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, so 12, 24, 36, they are locking in the rate for that term. So it doesn't matter if the next community has a higher rate or lower rate, they've already locked in their bundle and locked in for that. Now, what a lot of communities do, they may have their own program initially until they sync up with a larger bundle. So when a larger cluster of communities, we have some big bundles that go together, they'll synchronize with those. But the rates themselves will not change during the program term that the city decides to take on.
We have a question. What are the arguments against accepting SOPEC for the community? So I can start, and then if you have an add, but when we were looking at this with council, you know, it was really important to us that we had guidance in the energy market, because I'm just going to be honest with you, none of the staff members are watching the energy market every day. It's probably no surprise. We're not going to energy auctions. We don't have attorneys that specialize in this. So what the city of Upper Arlington did in the early 2000s was they paid money to a broker to do those services for us. And maybe you can get a little bit better rate, but I think you also have a much higher risk as a community because you're kind of out by yourself. And what Upper Arlington experienced is that when we were going out to bid, we weren't getting buyers. So we weren't getting, sometimes, in some of the cases from the history I read, any rates to give people. So the aggregation program kind of stopped. And it kind of goes with where the energy market is. Obviously right now rates are high, so we can get savings. When we were looking at this with council again, we wanted, partnering with SOPEC, if we joined SOPEC, is at no cost to the city. SOPEC explained where they get their revenue, but we get all the benefits of having those experts with, watching the energy market, having attorneys that can help us make those decisions and guide the community. I don't know if you have anything to add, but
I probably shouldn't, but no.
Okay.
I would say right now the market, if you want to pay more, then I guess don't. That's the status quo is definitely higher than the current market.
And for residents, you always have that choice to go shop for it. So
yeah, and we're not taking any options away. So I'm joking a little bit, but folks still have the freedom to go shop for themselves. So if they can buy a better rate, fantastic. But this is meant for the roughly 70% of customers who don't shop at all. So we provide that option for them as a new default versus the utility. So that's the intent of the program.
Yep.
So, and I didn't want to interrupt you two, but I do have the Marble Cliff current rate. It is 7.073 cents per kilowatt hour. That's with 100% renewable energy. The Greenie Rex Luke mentioned. That was in 3-4 months ago, I think, when that was locked. So the market, you know, moves a little bit since then, that kind of thing.
Thank you. All right, well, with that, we have answered all the questions that have been typed in. Like I said, again, feel free to send me an email and I will get answers to any additional questions. Look for those upcoming community meetings. If you know people that missed this and don't want to go to the meeting in person, we are going to post this presentation and our previous one that we did at noon online. So if you're interested for more Q&A, we'll have the whole Q&A session from the noon meeting posted as well. So reach out to us with any questions, and we appreciate everyone's attendance today. And thank you, SOPEC, for taking the time to be with us today.